Okay, welcome back everybody. So in this tutorial video, I'm going to be going over how to do the second artboard, which is the room with the table and the vase with the lily here. So I'm going to break it down to three teeny sections, which will be the table, the vase itself, and then the flower. As you can see, the table legs themselves are just simply drawn by the way I did it. I did not use the pencil or paintbrush tool. Here I used the line segment tool. To draw a line segment, you'll simply create a stroke and choose a color. I'll go over here to our activity, and you just click and drag. What I would suggest you doing is holding down the shift key when you click and drag so your line will be constrained to 45-degree angles. So for example, if I wanted a line that was straight across horizontal, I'd hold down the shift key and draw, and there we go. So there's our horizontal line. If I wanted vertical there or at a 45-degree angle, there'd be there. This just helps keep things straight, but it is not required. So what I did in my sample, as you can see, is I created some line segments. The two legs in the front are a little bit thicker. They're also lighter in tone. The ones in the back are skinnier and darker. Finally, the cross beams here that go across are a little darker as well and skinnier. So let's go to the tabletop. As you can see, I have an oval shape. You know how to make an oval shape, but this one has some thickness to it. So how did I create that? Well, I wanted to keep things simple. So all I did was I created two ovals and stacked them. To start, you're going to make sure that your tulip and table layer is selected and the other two layers are locked so you don't accidentally draw on them. And I'm going to go ahead, grab my ellipse tool. This time, I'm going to choose no stroke, and I'm going to just grab this brown here, make it a little bit lighter. Now, of course, you can make any color table you darn well please. And I'm just going to go ahead and draw an ellipse, closely matching this somewhat. It's a little bit too wide, so I'm going to pull it in a bit. Okay. All right, so there's an ellipse. We all know how to do that. Let's go ahead and duplicate it, holding down your Alt key and duplicating. I think what I'm going to do here, just for demonstration purposes, is I'm going to create a stroke so you can actually see. And notice how the one on the bottom is, the one that's lower is on top, if that makes any sense. I want to swap those two because I drew it second, so I'm going to go ahead and swap the order. Now this is the way I want it to be. I'm going to use my arrow tools so I can move around my second oval shape in precise movements, and then I'm going to zoom in a little bit so you can see this better. Now, all I did here, again, I do things the quick and dirty way a lot of times, and all I wanted to do is reshape this, because if I look at this, okay, it kind of looks like there's some depth here, but it's messed up on the ends. So what I showed you in the last video is simply by activating the shape you wanted to manipulate and choosing your direct selection tool, you can manipulate different anchors. But what if you wanted to change or you wanted to add some anchors? Well, I did show you briefly that you can use the pen tool to put additional anchors down on your shape. Now, before I do that, I'm just going to choose my direct selection tool, activate one anchor, and then I'm going to drag it. And I'm going to pull this in a bit, and I'm going to do the same for the other side. This just reshapes it a little bit. Now I'm going to go ahead and add some more anchor points. So again, I'm going to grab the pen tool. I'm going to mouse over the edge of my oval here, the path itself. You'll see the plus sign show up next to my pen tool, and I'll click, and then I'll click again. Now I have two more anchors. Going back to my direct selection tool, I'll select it and move it. I'm going to go ahead and get in really close here so you can see what the heck I'm doing. So I'm kind of reshaping this in a way. Can you see what I'm doing here? This just takes a little bit of practice, but once you've done it, once you've done it a couple of times, it's reselected here. I'm grabbing my handle so I can change the way this looks. Pull this in a bit, pull this out. I'm going to take my here. Ooh, that looks pretty good. It's not exact, but it's exactness isn't the point. What you want to do is just practice. So notice the difference between the two here. So you'll go ahead and do the same with the other side, and then simply change your fill color so it's a little bit of a different tone. I'll go to my fill here, bring it to the forefront, double clicking on it, and I'm just going to darken it a bit. Notice that it's previewing. I went ahead and got rid of my strokes. If you love the stroke, keep it or make it thinner. There we go. Okay. So that was the tabletop. Let's move on to the vase. Now the vase is where you're going to get a chance to play around with the well, it is a paintbrush, but we're going to go ahead and load up a calligraphy pen. So do this along with me. Go ahead and grab your paintbrush tool and pull out your brushes panel. Of course, what you're seeing here are recently used brushes and some defaults. If you click on some of these defaults, you'll notice that some of them say oval or flat or round. Let's go ahead and double click on this 3-point oval. That'll bring up an editor. So let's take a look at this. What you're looking at here is, in this shape here, is how you can build the way your pen works. Now, let's go back for a second. A calligraphy pen is an old school fountain pen that has a specific shape to it. So it's those old school pens where you actually dip your pen into a little bottle of ink and then tap on it, and then you can draw on a piece of paper. Now, these calligraphy pens have different shapes for the nib or tip, and you can have an angled tip to a really interesting shape that gets thinner or thicker depending on the angle of which you draw. Instead of me talking about it, let's just play around and try. So I'm going to make my oval roughly about a 45-degree angle, and I'm going to decrease my roundness a little bit. Lastly, I'm going to change my size to around 20 points or so. I'm going to make sure all three of these are at fixed. I'm going to hit OK. You'll notice a preview of your brush. So go ahead and just draw like a little squiggly anywhere on your artboard. That's kind of what I'm talking about. You can notice that it looks like it's thicker in some parts and thinner in other parts. That's because of the angle and the shape of the pen. Now this is really, really thick. So I'm going to go ahead and select it, delete it, get back to it, and I'm going to go ahead and reduce the size to maybe around 10 points, and maybe decrease the roundness even further. So it's almost just a line here, maybe around 10%. I'll hit OK, and we'll draw again. Now it kind of looks like a ribbon. In fact, that's the illusion that you get when you do a calligraphy pen. Calligraphy pens don't have to look like a ribbon, but that's just one thing you can do. And it actually gives a pretty cool effect. So what I'm going to have you do, double click on this, get to a thickness that you think you can use to draw the outline of the vase. So my 10 point is way too thick. I'm going to go for maybe 3. And I'm going to rename this. I'm going to say, how about vase pen? There it is, it's active. Now I have black already selected here for my stroke color. Grabbing my brush again, and I'm going to see if I can draw an outline. Now I'm going to do this in segments. I'm going to draw the lip, outer lip, and then I'm going to draw a side, and then the round bottom, and another side up here. So I guess it's 4 different segments. And I don't really care if this is very accurate. You know that you can actually change these. I'm going to draw a little test here. Now to me, that's still pretty darn thick. So I'm going to go down to my properties panel. I'm going to highlight this. I think about a 0.5 point works really well. So I'm going to keep this at a 0.5 point. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to draw a little curve up at the top. Boy, that was sloppy. That's okay. Now, if you get, to the point where you just want to try it again, and that's fine. But I'm just going to go ahead and draw this. There we go. Did you notice that when you draw a line and you let go of your mouse button, instantly your line smooths out? Well, that's what happened, and that is not an accident. What that is, if I double click on one of these drawing tools, I have something called fidelity. Fidelity means that how much do you want the line to smooth out when you let go of the mouse? Here you got more smooth, here you got more accurate. This is defaulted to the middle, which works great for this situation, especially since I'm drawing with a mouse. Now, your goal is to be able to try to connect these. So I'm going to go ahead and put my mouse down at the end of my previous line, and I'm going to draw a little. Oh boy, that was terrible. I'm going to draw another one here, and I'm going to try to connect. There. Okay. Now, if you drew something like this, that is fine. I'm going to grab my direct selection tool, and I'm going to highlight one of these, and I'm going to grab one of these line segments, should I say, grab an anchor, and I'm going to start to reshape this a bit. I'm going to move this up here. You're going to want to use the handles. You may also think that there might be too many darn line segments. Like, how come there's two line segments right over here? So if I highlight this one and hit the delete key, well, that doesn't work. Never mind. Keep them for now. Let's just keep this simple. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to just, this one doesn't look quite as ugly. There we go. I'm going to go ahead and reshape this. Now you want the tips. I'm going to go ahead and you want the ends. This anchor and this anchor should be really close to each other. So in fact, they should overlap or get pretty close to that. So I'm going to make sure that I have my anchor highlighted, and then I'm going to move it up to the line segment. It may snap to the line segment, which is a good thing. Things snap by default. There. Do you notice how that snapped to the line segment? I'm going to go ahead and pull this in a bit. It doesn't need to be perfect. Okay, good enough for now. Once you get your outline drawn the way you like it, let's see if we can join these four line segments. Grabbing your regular selection tool, let's activate all four pieces by touching them with the marquee. And you're going to go over to the edit menu, and you're going to choose, oh, I'm sorry, the object menu. My bad. Object menu. Go down to the path selection, and you'll see a submenu pop out, and choose join. Now, if your lines were pretty close, were touching each other, they should join. Now, what this did is actually it created a shape, which I can now fill. So go ahead and choose a color that you might want to fill it with. I chose like a blue or something. Chose purple. Okay, well, that's cool. But what about the top part? That's okay. We'll go ahead and draw that now. So grabbing your sync tool here. Now this time you can overlap, but this doesn't matter. So I am going to simply just draw this, and then I'm going to draw another line up here. So I got a line here, which looks terrible. I'm going to go ahead and reshape that. It snaps to my previous line. So we have an overlapping line here. A way to make sure that you're not going to be messing stuff up too much is to turn off those layers. So here's my shape here. I'm going to go ahead and lock my shape, so I can't mess with that. Oops, there we go. Once I have it shaped the way I want it to, and again, accuracy isn't really the case. It's supposed to look kind of loose. That's part of what a calligraphy pen does. I'm going to go ahead and, oops, there we go. I don't know why. There we go. So that, and I'll go ahead and do the same thing. Object, path, join, and then fill it. I'm going to darken the color, and there's my base. So what about filling your vase with a gradient as opposed to the solid color? Gradients are really cool because they give you the opportunity to make something have substance to it. So I'm going to go back to my vase face. I'm going to lock my little hole at the top here and activate it. So there it is. And I'm going to change this from a solid color to a gradient. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Window, Gradient. And of course, there are other ways to do this. And I want to do a radial gradient. So I'm going to choose this one in the middle. Now I lost my color, right? So my light color here, I'm going to make almost white. It's going to be like a really light lilac, and my dark is going to be a darker purple. Click on here. And let's see here. I'm going to pull up on all three of these a little bit. Oh, I'm sorry, not going to pull up the other direction. These are RGB sliders, meaning that the farther they go along, the more light there is, so it gets lighter. There. That's a good start. I'll go ahead and make my darker purple by selecting a starter color. That's really saturated. Pull back on the blue a little bit. Pull back on all of these, make it a little darker. There we go, you get the picture. So going back here, you know that you can edit this. You can pull in your sliders to adjust your gradient. I want more of a, I'm going to pull this all the way back out. This little diamond, the gradient slider here, just kind of biases how much you see of each. I'm going to pull this back just a bit. Now lastly, now this is okay, but really it would look better if this highlight was up here, where I'm circling here. And you'll notice this when you try this on your own. I'm going to dock this under here, and I'm going to choose my gradient tool. So remember this from the exercise from LearnKey, only now it's going to hopefully be a little bit more meaningful. Now, these tools that you're seeing here take a little bit of getting used to. I'm still getting used to them. You need to mouse over here and here. This one will change the way your radial gradient looks. Do you want it circle or you want an oval? I kind of want an oval. So I'm going to grab this and I'm going to pull this up. Well, that was neat, but now I made my oval way too big. So I'm going to go down to here and I'm going to size this, make it smaller. Okay, that's better. Now what about moving the center? Here's the center. If I click and hold and drag, notice how I can move it around. This sometimes moves around too, which I think is really annoying, but that's okay. So I'm going to back away. That looks pretty cool. If you think your lines are too thick, that's all right. I'm going to go ahead and select all of these pieces. For the vase, there we go, finally. And I'm going to choose my flyout menu here, and I'm going to choose, where is it here? Collect a new layer. Do you see what happened when I chose that? Now my vase is all one main layer with all the pieces inside of it. That keeps things organized, and now I can lock the whole darn thing without having to get all frustrated. I'm going to unlock it, select it, and stick it on here. Now this vase is really big, so I'm going to hold down my Shift key, shrink it down a bit. There. All right. So ladies and gentlemen, that is how you draw your vase. Watch my next video on how I actually make the tulip.